Have you ever had that heart-stopping moment when you realize you've sent a text to exactly the wrong person? That sinking feeling when you know there's no taking it back. That's exactly what happened to Mark Jensen, a single father of two who made one small slip of the thumb that would change his life forever. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories that remind us how life's biggest mistakes can sometimes lead to unexpected blessings. Mark Jensen stared at his phone in horror, his thumb still hovering over the screen where he'd just tapped send. Time seemed to freeze as the blue delivery confirmation appeared beneath his message. My boss is so hot it's actually distracting. Can't focus when she's in the room. The recipient? Not his best friend Dave as intended, but Diana Boswell, manager. No, 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 Mark whispered, his stomach plummeting as if he'd just stepped off a cliff. He frantically tapped the message, searching for a delete option that he knew didn't exist. The message had been delivered. There was no taking it back. At 36, Mark had enough challenges in his life. A widower for 3 years now, he was raising 10-year-old Emma and 7-year-old Liam on his own while working as a senior graphic designer at Horizon Marketing. The job had been a lifesaver after Sarah's death, stable hours, decent pay, and most importantly, a boss who understood when he occasionally needed flexibility for his kids' school events or doctor appointments. That boss was Diana Boswell. Brilliant, kind, professional Diana, who had just received a text explicitly stating that her employee found her attractive. Mark's phone slipped from his trembling fingers onto his desk. It was 7:30 p.m., and he was working late to finish a presentation due tomorrow. Diana had left the office hours ago. Maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't check her messages until morning. That would give him, what? A few hours to figure out how to explain this catastrophic mistake? He ran his hands through his already disheveled brown hair, trying to think clearly through the panic. Should he send another text explaining? No, that would only draw more attention to the first message. Should he email her? Call her? Pretend his phone was stolen? None of the options seemed good. The truth was, Mark had been harboring a quiet attraction to Diana for months now. She was everything he admired in a person: intelligent, compassionate, driven, and yes, beautiful with her dark eyes and the subtle smile that appeared when she was pleased with a project. But he had kept these thoughts strictly to himself, sharing them only occasionally with Dave during their weekly calls when they caught up on each other's lives. Dave was the only person who knew about Mark's feelings. As his oldest friend from college, Dave had been Mark's rock after Sarah's death from cancer 3 years ago. When Mark had finally felt the first stirrings of attraction for someone new, Dave had been supportive, encouraging even, while also reminding Mark of the complications of workplace relationships, especially with his boss. And now, with one careless tap, all those private thoughts were exposed in the most unprofessional way possible. His office phone rang, making him jump. The caller ID showed Diana's cell number. Mark closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and picked up the phone. Diana, I can explain. Mark, her voice was calm, professional. I just received a rather unusual text from you. I am so sorry, he blurted. It was meant for my friend Dave. I wasn't paying attention to who I was texting. I completely understand if you want to report this to HR, but please know it was an accident and I would never intentionally. Mark, she interrupted. Take a breath. I'm not calling to reprimand you. He fell silent, confused. These things happen, she continued. Though I have to admit, it's a first for me. I appreciate your immediate apology, and I think we can just move past this. We're both adults. Relief washed over him. Thank you. I'm really embarrassed. Don't be. Actually, I'm calling about the Henderson presentation. Did you finish the mock-ups? Mark blinked, thrown by the abrupt change of subject. Yes, just finalizing them now. Good. That's all I needed to know. See you tomorrow, Mark. The line went dead, leaving Mark staring at the phone. Had that really just happened? Had Diana Boswell, the most professional person he knew, just brushed off his mortifying text like it was nothing? He sat back in his chair, the adrenaline slowly draining from his system, leaving him exhausted. He still had to finish the presentation, but his mind was spinning with questions. Was Diana genuinely unbothered, or was she just being professional now before taking action tomorrow? Would there be an awkward HR meeting waiting for him? Would this affect his job security? The job at Horizon Marketing wasn't just a paycheck for Mark, it was a lifeline. After Sarah's illness and the mountain of medical bills that followed, he had been on shaky financial ground. This position had allowed him to stabilize, to provide for Emma and Liam, to start rebuilding their lives in the wake of devastating loss. The thought of jeopardizing that security made his chest tighten with anxiety. He forced himself to focus on the presentation, meticulously checking every slide, every graphic, every word. If tomorrow was going to be difficult, at least he would deliver perfect work. It was nearly 9 p.m. when he finally saved the file, emailed it to himself as a backup, and shut down his computer. The office was empty and quiet as he gathered his things. On his way out, he passed Diana's office, the door closed, the room dark. He paused for a moment, wondering what she was really thinking about his text. Was she laughing about it? Annoyed? Uncomfortable? Her reaction on the phone had been so measured that he couldn't tell. He drove home that night in a daze, rehearsing tomorrow's inevitable awkward encounter. By the time he relieved Mrs. Patel, his elderly neighbor who watched the kids after school, he had convinced himself that Diana's calm reaction was just the prelude to a formal HR discussion. "Daddy!" Liam launched himself at Mark's legs the moment he walked through the door. "Hey, buddy." Mark scooped him up, grateful for the distraction. "Were you good for Mrs. Patel?" "He was an angel," Mrs. Patel said, gathering her knitting. "Emma finished all her homework too." Mrs. Patel had been a godsend after Sarah died. A retired teacher who lived in the apartment across the hall, she had stepped in to help with after-school care when Mark had to work late. Her kindness had been one of the few constants in their lives during that terrible time. "Thanks as always, Mrs. Patel." Mark set Liam down and walked her to the door. "You look troubled," the older woman observed quietly. "Everything okay?" Mark forced a smile. "Just work stress. Nothing serious." "You work too hard," she said, patting his arm. "Those children need their father present, not just providing." It was a gentle reminder she'd given him before, and Mark knew she was right. He'd thrown himself into work partly out of necessity, but also as a way to cope with his grief. Sometimes he worried that he was shortchanging Emma and Liam emotionally, even as he made sure they had everything they needed materially. "I know," he acknowledged. "I'm trying to find a better balance." After Mrs. Patel left, Mark heated up the pasta she had prepared for dinner. The apartment was small but comfortable, a 3-bedroom unit in a decent neighborhood with good schools. Photos of Sarah were scattered throughout, keeping her memory alive for the children. Her smiling face looked out from frames on the walls, the bookshelves, the kids' bedrooms. Sometimes Mark wondered if it was healthy to keep so many reminders around, but he couldn't bear to put them away. Sarah had been the love of his life, his college sweetheart, the mother of his children. Her absence still felt like a physical wound some days. "Dad, can you help me with my science project?" Emma asked as they sat down to eat. "It's due Friday and I need to make a model of a cell." "Sure, honey. We can work on it tomorrow night." "But tomorrow is my soccer practice," she reminded him. Mark mentally reviewed his calendar. "Right. Then we'll do it Thursday." "Thursday is parent-teacher conferences," Emma said, a note of frustration creeping into her voice. Mark sighed. He was constantly juggling, constantly dropping balls. "Okay, we'll figure it out. Maybe we can work on it a little bit each night." Emma nodded, but he could see the disappointment in her eyes. She was so much like her mother, organized, diligent, always planning ahead. And like Sarah, she was patient with Mark's sometimes chaotic approach to life. Liam, on the other hand, was pure energy and emotion. Dad, I drew a picture at school today. Wanna see? Absolutely, Mark said, grateful for his son's ability to live completely in the present moment. Liam ran to his backpack and returned with a crayon drawing of what appeared to be their family, 3 stick figures, 1 tall and 2 small, with a 4th figure floating above them with wings. That's you, me, Emma, and Mommy in heaven, Liam explained, pointing to each figure. Mark felt his throat tighten. It's beautiful, buddy. We should hang it on the fridge. After dinner, homework check, baths, and bedtime stories, Mark finally collapsed onto his couch. He pulled out his phone, tempted to text Dave about what had happened, then thought better of it. He'd already done enough damage with texting for one day. Instead, he opened his laptop to review the Henderson presentation one more time. If tomorrow was going to be his last day at Horizon Marketing, at least he'd go out with a perfect pitch. As he worked, his mind kept drifting back to Diana. They had always had a good professional relationship. She appreciated his creativity and work ethic, and he respected her leadership style and vision for the company. But there had always been a certain distance between them, appropriate for a boss and employee, but perhaps reinforced by Mark's awareness of his own attraction to her. Diana was probably around his age, maybe a year or 2 older. She had never mentioned a partner or children, though Mark had noticed she didn't wear a wedding ring. Not that he had been looking specifically much. She kept her personal life private, focusing conversations on work and occasionally asking about Emma and Liam with genuine interest. What would she think if she knew the full context of his text? That it wasn't just a random observation, but part of an ongoing awareness that had been building for months? That sometimes when she leaned over his desk to review his designs, the subtle scent of her perfume made it hard for him to concentrate? That he had caught himself daydreaming about asking her to coffee, not as his boss, but as a woman he found intriguing? Mark shook his head, closing the laptop. These thoughts weren't helping. Tomorrow he would face whatever consequences came, apologize again if necessary, and do everything possible to preserve his job and professional reputation. The attraction to Diana would have to be buried even deeper now, locked away where it couldn't cause any more trouble. The next morning was chaos, as usual. Emma couldn't find her science project, Liam spilled cereal all over his school uniform, and the car made an ominous clicking sound that Mark definitely didn't have time to investigate. By the time he dropped the kids at school and arrived at the office, he was already exhausted, and now had to face Diana. He kept his head down as he walked to his desk, avoiding eye contact with everyone. His plan was to hide in his cubicle until the 10 a.m. presentation, then face whatever consequences came after. The Horizon Marketing office occupied half a floor in a downtown high-rise. It was open concept with glass-walled conference rooms and offices around the perimeter. Mark's desk was in the creative department section, surrounded by other designers and copywriters. Usually, he enjoyed the collaborative environment, but today he wished for walls and a door he could close. "Morning, Mark," called Jen from the desk opposite his. "Ready for the Henderson pitch?" "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, trying to sound normal. "Diana's been singing your praises to everyone. Says your designs are exactly what they're looking for." Mark looked up in surprise. "She said that? Today?" "Yeah, at the morning briefing." "You missed it." That was unexpected. If Diana was planning to reprimand him or report him to HR, would she be complimenting his work to the team? He turned on his computer and checked his email. Nothing unusual, just the regular morning updates and a reminder about the Henderson meeting. No ominous message from Human Resources requesting a meeting. Maybe, just maybe, Diana had meant what she said on the phone. Maybe they really could move past this. At 9:45, his desk phone rang. "Can you come to my office?" Diana asked. "I'd like to review the presentation before the clients arrive." "Of course," Mark said, gathering his materials with shaking hands. Diana's office was at the end of the hall, glass-walled but with blinds that were currently open. She was typing at her computer when he knocked on the door frame. "Come in, Mark." "Close the door." He did as instructed, then took the seat across from her desk. Diana was dressed in a navy blue suit, her dark hair pulled back in its usual neat bun. She looked exactly as she always did, professional, put together, and yes, beautiful in that understated way that had caught his attention months ago. "The Henderson files," she prompted, and he realized he'd been staring. "Right, sorry." He handed over the folder and opened his laptop. "I've made some adjustments to the color scheme based on their new branding guidelines." They reviewed the presentation for 15 minutes, Diana offering small suggestions and Mark making notes. It was completely normal, as if last night had never happened. Just as Mark was beginning to relax, Diana closed the folder. "About that text," she said. Mark's heart sank. Here it came. "I want to be clear that I'm not upset or offended," she continued. "But I do think we should address it rather than pretend it didn't happen." "I understand," Mark said, bracing himself. "And I completely respect whatever action you feel is appropriate." Diana looked at him curiously. "Action?" "Mark, I'm not planning to take any action. I just wanted to say that while I appreciate the compliment, I think it's important we maintain our professional relationship." "Absolutely," Mark agreed quickly. "That's all I want too." "Good." She smiled, and for the first time, Mark noticed a slight flush on her cheeks. "Then let's go wow the Hendersons." As they walked to the conference room together, Mark felt lighter than he had in 24 hours. Not only was his job safe, but Diana had actually taken his mortifying mistake as a compliment. He hadn't ruined everything. In fact, there was something almost friendly in her manner now, as if his accidental text had broken through some invisible barrier between them. The Henderson team was already seated in the conference room, for executives from a regional chain of high-end furniture stores looking to rebrand and expand their market. Mark had spent weeks researching their company, their competitors, and their target demographic, developing a campaign that would position them as both luxurious and accessible. "Good morning, everyone," Diana began, her voice confident and warm. "We're excited to share our ideas for the Henderson Furniture rebranding campaign. I'll give a brief overview, and then Mark Jensen, our senior designer, will walk you through the creative concepts." Mark watched as she commanded the room, outlining the marketing strategy with clarity and vision. She was so good at this, finding the perfect balance between listening to the client's needs and guiding them toward effective solutions. It was one of the many things he admired about her professionally. When it was his turn to present, Mark pushed all personal thoughts aside and focused on the work. He explained the design choices, the color psychology, the typography that would define the new Henderson brand. As he spoke, he could see the clients leaning forward, nodding, exchanging impressed glances. "What I love about this approach," said Catherine Henderson, the company CEO, "is that it honors our heritage while pushing us forward. It feels both familiar and fresh." "That's exactly what we were aiming for," Mark said, relieved that they understood his vision. The presentation went perfectly. The clients loved the designs, approved the campaign strategy, and signed a 2-year contract on the spot. As the team celebrated back in the conference room, Mark felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He hadn't lost his job. He hadn't even damaged his relationship with Diana. If anything, there was a new ease between them, as if the awkwardness had somehow cleared the air. "Great job, everyone," Diana said, addressing the team. "Especially you, Mark. Your designs really sealed the deal." There were congratulations all around, plans for implementing the campaign, discussions about timelines and deliverables. Mark participated, but part of him was still processing the events of the last 24 hours. How had his biggest professional mistake turned into one of his most successful presentations? That evening, as Mark packed up to leave, Diana stopped by his desk. "Great work today," she said. The Hendersons were impressed. "Thanks." It was.